Welcome back. It's the Big Blue Banter, New York Giants football podcast. I'm Dan Schneier, joined as always my co-host Nick Filato. Today we're here to talk a little bit quarterbacks. There's some buzz coming from the Senior Bowl, Nick, involving Jaxson Dart, the quarterback out of Ole Miss, and his performance at the Senior Bowl. A lot of mixed reviews because, you have Jordan Schultz, who great. I like him as a reporter, but does seem to me, Nick, to be very connected to players and agents. And I do feel a little propagandized when I read some of his reports. He had a big report on Jaxson Dart, kind of just talking about how, scouts loved him. They were in love with him at the Senior Bowl and just discussing a lot of traits that he put on display there. And then a lot of people who were there, ball knowers that we've had on this podcast, Nick, John Ledyard, among others. John Leonard's the one that we've had on the show, but a bunch of guys that we like and we appreciate them tape saying, wow, this is really weird. We saw something completely different when we were at the Senior Bowl, both on the tape and then live watching him play from an arm talent standpoint, from a ball placement standpoint, from just the being impressed or not. And it was one side was Jordan Schultz agent side impressed, the other side not. But what comes with these kind of Senior Bowl performances we've seen through the years, Nick, is players' supposed stock rising or falling, which the reality and the funny and what's funny about it all to me, Nick, is none of this is actually true. It's all just what the media or whoever is reporting on it is saying is happening. But no one is in these rooms with these 32 GMs, and no one has any idea how they evaluate these quarterbacks. There's whispers, but that's about it. And it's just funny to me, Nick, the idea that all these guys could be working all year long to evaluate a prospect. And then like the Senior Bowl comes and like guys can go woo up a board or woo down a board. Now, I'm laughing at that, but I should probably not be, considering in 2019, the Giants were one of those teams that didn't really have a strong evaluation on a player and then woo shot him up the board after a Senior Bowl, being Daniel Jones, and then woo took him at 6 overall when most people had a second or worse grade on him, and then 6 last years of Giants football. But I mean,
Dan Schneier full of sound effects right now, guys. You guys are getting the full package today.
It's just funny to me, Nick. It's like, do people really think that that there's this much movement on the draft board for a lot of these players? I don't.
I'm not sure. I think it's an independent thing, team by team. More so the general managers and the scouts do get to have like one-on-one 10 to 15 minute conversations with these players. That could influence if a player goes up and down the board, if that specific player aligns with what the team is supposed to do, or if they realize, oh man, I don't really know if this player is intellectually there to adopt our system, like those types of things in the meeting rooms. Not necessarily what's going on the field. I think in the practice you can glean a lot. And the game is like, dude, I used to go to the Senior. I went like I think 7 years in a row when I was in my early 20s, and when no one ever stayed for the game, we always left because the game wasn't really that important. But again,
it's like a scrimmage.
It's a scrimmage. You want to see how these players do compete when the lights are the brightest, and that is the brightest moment of this event that we do put a lot of stock in. But it's funny because the New York Giants specifically drafted 3 Senior Bowl MVPs. It was Kyle Aletta, it was Davis Webb, and then it was obviously Daniel Jones. So the Giants were just taking and putting a lot of stock into this event when it was Jerry Reese and the game, Jerry Reese and Dave Gettleman.
The actual game, not just the event. I think you can glean a lot more from the practice week too. And I think you got to be there to see how they're throwing it. It's very interesting. Just listening, I always feel, Nick, like when I've been able to attend Giant games, you can really get a different feel for quarterbacks. You can see how they actually throw the ball when you're there. How does it cut through the wind, and how does that ball look? And it's just interesting to me to have all these guys we know who like to evaluate the tape. We respect John Ledyard. Be like, wow, this is just a completely different story than what and he even said, like, I texted my whole group chat of people who were at the Senior Bowl, and he's like, this is not it. No one felt this way about Jaxson Dart at the event, besides, I guess, Jordan Schultz, and then the slew of GMs that he says are now like all in on Dart. And like, I saw Giant Insider say, like, I don't know, but now I know one thing: Jaxson Dart's a first rounder. And it's like, is this really the case? Are GMs really like, oh, wow, he looked good at the Senior Bowl and now he's an immediate first rounder? I would just hope that's not how it works. I know it kind of is funny because we kind of went through this, but that shouldn't be the process.
I'm not trying to say anybody has anything nefarious or trying to impugn anybody's opinions, but we do understand the reality of the situation that certain agents are connected with certain reporters and certain journalists, and then those journalists are incentivized to promote a certain idea.
Sure.
Am I saying any of these reporters are doing that? No, but we understand that this is a business, and let's not act as if that does not happen.
Yeah, it's important to acknowledge that. And I just don't think this is what's really the be all end all. Some people said now he's the QB2 in this draft or something like that. It's like if he was the QB2 for a team before the Senior Bowl, he's a QB2 for the team after the Senior Bowl. They're not looking at this. And I just watched every throw and every play from his Senior Bowl. I wasn't very impressed. I don't know if you got a chance to watch it.
Not seen it, no.
Yeah, Authentic. Shout out Authentic. He put up every throw or every snap, I guess it was, from Jaxson Dart. He made one play that I thought was interesting. He located a guy. He located a defender with his head turned around down the field, and he just kind of put it in that vicinity. Defender didn't have time to turn around and locate the football, and it was a catch. The deep ball, 2 of them, it felt like it hung up in there. He made the decision early to throw it, but what didn't look great to me. I don't think his arm looks too special to me. I think it looks fine and adequate. But that takes us to our next point, Nick, which is the connection here with Jaxson Dart, who played at Ole Miss, Eli Manning, who played at Ole Miss and watches a lot of Ole Miss football, and now Eli Manning, who is reportedly going to be helping the Giants evaluate this quarterback class. Now, when that came out, and we'll talk in a second about Eli Manning's comments about Jaxson Dart specifically, Nick, but when that came out, that Eli Manning would be helping the Giants, there was some backlash. We know how fractured this Giants fan base is, man. I have gotten to the point, Nick, where I have spent so much less time, finally, on Twitter than I ever used to, because it's just gotten so freaking toxic, man, on that. There are so many, when it comes to the Giants, man, there are multiple factions, but one faction is like, you mention one quarterback and then it becomes a race thing at times on Giants Twitter. It gets really ugly in a lot of ways. And there's just there's so many people angry at so many different people for ultimately one thing, which is the Giants can't win football games. And they're just look to be just like a disaster of a franchise. But, people were really mad that Eli's helping out because people have this nonsense idea in my mind, Nick, this nonsense idea that Eli Manning doesn't know how to evaluate quarterbacks because he liked Daniel Jones. Now, this is a nonsense idea to me, Nick, because there's zero proof whatsoever that Eli Manning played any role in the Giants drafting Daniel Jones.
I don't even understand how that makes sense, though, either, dude. Like, why would Eli Manning have a role in drafting the guy who's going? I think
they're conflating what Eli said after Jones was already on the team and Eli was retired with him liking Daniel Jones. Like, I feel, to me and you, Nick, and I think most of our listeners, it is common sense that any comment Eli made about Daniel Jones on the Manning cast or when he gets an interview with Serby in the Post or whatever in 2021, 2022, 2023 is meaningless, because we know that Eli still works within the Giants organization, is a legend of the Giants organization, and would never trash or say anything negative, to be quite frank, about a current starter or a current player on the Giants. But him saying something good about a current player means nothing to us because it's just fluff. It's just what you would expect him to say. He's going to support anyone on the team. That doesn't mean he supported Daniel Jones pre-draft or anything really he likes. It doesn't even mean he thinks Daniel Jones is a good quarterback on tape at all, because he's not going to say if he didn't. So Eli Manning was on the team when they drafted Daniel Jones. He played zero role in them scouting Jones or drafting Jones. So he cannot be accredited to, in my mind. We can't look at this and be like, we can't trust Eli at all on these evals of quarterbacks because he liked Daniel Jones. There's no proof he liked Daniel Jones. Him saying it is not proof at all. And you can go back to the Joe Judge era when he was finally fired, Nick. I always bring this up. There was like a nice fluff piece. I forgot who wrote it and who reported on it, but it was like a beautiful piece about Joe Judge about 1 to 2 weeks before he was fired, had like 4 anonymous players quoted, and they're all just fluffing it up. No, we like it here. We like it here. It's great here. And then we find out at weeks after he's fired, it's like, no, everybody was walking on eggshells. Nobody wanted to be in this. He was treating it like a high school team. So it's just what they say when the players are employed or the person is employed is meaningless and should not be held accountable to Eli Manning's ability to evaluate quarterbacks, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. And also, like, how much influence is that going to have on Joe Shane's process and what Joe Shane is doing? Obviously, I want the input of Eli Manning. His recommendation will be heard in the Giants front office, but it's not going to be the end all be all. And we do know that Eli Manning knows a thing or two about playing quarterback. He runs one of the biggest, I don't think I'm stepping out of line by saying this, but one of the most significant quarterback camps in the entire country with his brother Peyton and the Manning Academy, the Manning camp. So, yeah, I want to hear what he has to say about Jaxson Dart, about Shedeur Sanders, about Cam Ward. And it doesn't mean if he doesn't like one or likes one more than the other, the Giants will definitely make that decision based off that. It's just another voice to be heard, and I value his opinion.
100%, and I hope the Giants do too. I think his evaluation and what he can offer the Giants watching tape of these players is something. Like you said, he runs a camp that is the most ballyhooed camp for young quarterbacks, and he's seen so many different quarterbacks play the game, Nick. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's had the ability to get his eyes on so many. The two college champion quarterbacks this year, they're not great players for the NFL, at least, Riley Leonard and Will Howard, but they maximized their talent, and they were both at the Manning camp. And I remember hearing Archie talking about that before the game, and Eli talking about that. Eli is also a Super Bowl winning quarterback who had authority pre-snap and post-snap and did things at Ole Miss. When I go back, like, I have the SEC Network as a default channel for my Samsung TV, and they just randomly play Ole Miss games. I'm watching him at the line of scrimmage making calls in college, like something we didn't see often from Daniel Jones in year 6 and year 3 of an NFL system. Like, this is not a common thing for quarterbacks. He knows the game inside out. Sure, he threw a lot of interceptions. A lot of that were miscommunications with the receivers, and it had nothing to do with his knowledge of the game. And being able to help the Giants with what he's looking for a quarterback, to me, is valuable. And I know some fans, again, they look at the Daniel Jones quotes of when Jones was on the team, but I would hope that you can parse through that and understand, like, Eli's obviously going to say nice things about the starting quarterback of the Giants, whoever that may be. And obviously has a personal relationship with Jones too, because Jones went to the camp and came up through Cutcliffe. He's not just going to be like, yeah, dude, I watched the tape, and Jones literally can't process a defense. He throws the ball late all the time. The ball placement sucks. The arm talent's mediocre. He's not going to come out and do that.
Yeah, with that said, just because I know Eli Manning has more of a relationship with, let's say, Jaxson Dart than he does some of the other quarterbacks, I hope that he can be objective and critical of Jaxson Dart over. But again, like, I don't think this is like Joe Shane's like, oh, Eli said this, we're going to go with it, right? They're going to have their entire evaluation. I'm pretty sure right now they know the quarterback that they want. Like, I have no inside knowledge at this point, but we know that since the beginning of last season, Joe Shane in the front office were like, yo, we are screwed at quarterback, guys. We need to do something. They have been studying these quarterbacks tirelessly, even through the season, even though that is a little bit more difficult because there are so many things that a general manager and a front office need to do through a season. And I think, like, the pro scouting department and that side of things will probably get a little bit into the evaluation process after free agency, and they'll put their input. But if I'm a betting man, since there's not a ton of quarterbacks in this draft class, it's not like last year, I think they probably have their favorite. I just don't know which one of those guys it is yet. Doesn't mean that they're solidified on it, because there's still a process to be done, but I'm imagining they probably know a decent amount about these guys, even this early on in the process.
Yeah, a lot. I mean, just given what we know publicly, Nick, to further your point, they should be pretty much through what they need when it comes to Shedeur with the amount of resources they spend on him, right? Like, they know who he is. They always talk about, we have to know who these players are. They can't just go by the tape. And Eli even discussed that as well. But one thing Eli also said, I'm going to get to in a second, Eli's 4 points that he really pinned down on for what he's looking for when he's evaluating the tape and then providing it. But first, I'll say this. I agree with your point. While I do trust that Eli knows a lot more football than people who are discrediting for the DJ thing after the fact are saying, we don't know if he'll be objective. That's something that I just have no idea on. Like, that's just, we don't know him well enough to know. Is he going to be objective about Dart, or he likes his kid? I hope he will be, and he'll just go by what he sees on tape.
This episode is brought to you by Skims. Get your hands on the best underwear in the land. Look, I'm sure, gentlemen, you're a lot like me. You don't want your fit to be too compact, nor do you want to be swinging around like you're trying to destroy a piñata. You want everything in place. Comfort on a cloud with no ride-up. That is the ideal situation, and Skims provides that situation for us, gentlemen. They sent me a few pairs. I wear them to work. I wear them while I'm working out, and they are exactly what I'm looking for in my underwear. And Christmas is right around the corner. So grab a pair of Skims for someone in your life. Maybe that someone is you, and you want that comfortable underwear for your whole situation down there. So shop Skims Men's at skims.com. That's skims.com. Let them know we sent you. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select our show, Big Blue Banter, in the drop-down menu that follows. And if you're looking for the perfect gifts for the whole family, Skims just launched their biggest holiday shop ever. So visit skims.com to check that out and maximize your draw's comfortability.
Hey everyone, this episode is brought to you by Manscaped, the global leader in men's lifestyle and grooming. Every man knows the unbeatable feeling of a fresh barbershop shave. Now, what if I told you that you no longer have to wait weeks or even months between appointments to experience it? Introducing Manscaped's newest innovation, the Chairman Pro Electric Foil Shaver, the game-changing tool that brings the luxury of professional shave right into your home. Whether you're after that daily silky smooth finish or prefer to maintain a rugged 5 o'clock shadow, the Chairman Pro Electric Foil Shaver is your go-to for precision and style every time. Head over to manscaped.com and join the over 11 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by using code BIGBLUE for 20% off. Gentlemen, this has changed the grooming game for me, and I highly recommend it for you. Get the Chairman Pro today and experience a shave that is as smooth as you deserve. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code BIGBLUE at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code BIGBLUE at manscaped.com.
And look, to what your point, Nick, we know they're using the resources on Shador. We think the similar thing with Cam Ward and all these players. But one thing that Eli mentioned before going over his 4 things that'll look for on tape, that he said the tape won't be able to show him, Nick. And it's not what Joe Schoen, and even though that's important, it's not the getting to know it. It's the how does the arm look live? And that's why I love that we've spent the time and the resources to watch these quarterbacks live. As I talked to someone who works within college football, Nick, as a scout earlier this season. It was one of the late games. I don't remember which one it was. I think it was Missouri, one of those types of teams. Colorado was playing them, and he was at the game. Kansas, maybe mid-Kansas, and it was a cold day. And he was like, dude, the ball just doesn't jump out of Shador Sanders' arm. Like, that ball does not look great live from a velocity standpoint. And we know with Shador, it's not going to be about velocity. Like, if you're going to draft him, you're drafting him for the idea of, can this guy with this repeatable motion get the ball out fast, on time, on schedule, lead receivers, and be a Burrow-type quarterback? But, when you watch it, if you're a scout and you say, wow, that doesn't really look like an NFL arm live, and I'm not saying that's the case for Sanders, it's just what one person told me, it's interesting, and that's a critical factor in here. Why, like, people go down to the Senior Bowl and all these games, like we've seen Shane at, to watch these guys' arm. Like, how does the arm talent look in December in the Meadowlands where it's windy as fuck and cold, and you got to cut the ball through that air? Like that, like not every quarterback works in New York. There's a reason Eli is the guy that worked. There's a reason Sims is the guy that worked. Even Hostetler for the time that he played. It's because they had arm talent to cut through the wind. Kerry Collins, arm talent to cut through the wind. Right. It's a really important factor for being a quarterback in this specific franchise. So that's something we won't get the factor. We won't get, we'll never have a feel on because me and you didn't get a chance to watch these guys live. But there were 4 things that Eli Manning brought up as far as what he looks for on tape, Nick. Which, by the way, I mean, if you're being objective about this, after I go over these, Nick, you can pretty much just put 2 and 2 together. And it's not mean. It's just objectivity. Like, watch the tape yourself and say that it's clear Eli Manning does not have a high regard of what Daniel Jones has put on tape at the NFL level, because Daniel Jones is basically bottom tier in all 4 of these things that Eli looks for on tape. And he said the first is he going through progressions? That's the first thing Eli looks for. Number 2 is he on time? 3, is he throwing? This is things that he told Kay Adams, by the way, Eli Manning. 3, is he throwing before the wide receivers are out of the breaks? So these are all things we discussed, Nick, and they're kind of work hand in hand, and they're the most important things. But then the 4th thing I thought was interesting from Eli is he taking sacks that he shouldn't. That's something he's looking for when he evaluates the tape. And I wasn't expecting him to talk about that.
Taking sacks that he shouldn't is interesting. I'm trying to get all 22 I can before we dive into these quarterbacks. I'm really excited to. I know Shador took a lot of sacks in Colorado, but you also got away, dude. Your offensive line is not that great. So how do you factor that in? I'm excited to get into that tape to really break that down a little bit later on in this process. But taking sacks that you're not supposed to, I think, is that one thing that Jones did an okay job of towards the end of his tenure here with the New York
Giants? He got better at it. Yeah, he got better at it.
But that anticipatory factor, the throwing before the receivers come out of their break, like that's what I want to see, man, because you need to maximize time if you're a quarterback in the NFL. You don't have a lot of time, and the windows are very, very small. Now, obviously, you need to have that rapport with the wide receiver. You need to have good wide receivers to allow that to be maximized. But right now the Giants have that. A lot of them are cheap too. A lot of them are under those rookie contracts. If they can find this quarterback who can throw with anticipation, man, it can just unlock a different thing that we've seen here
The
basically
whole
since
offense
Eli Manning.
changes.
The whole offense will change. And I think Dable will thrive in that type of environment as a play caller.
You could look at it like last year, they were obviously an injured team, a very injured team, the 49ers I'm
Yeah.
talking about. But you could look at the 49ers pre and post Jimmy Garoppolo for a quarterback who's throwing on time, keeping us offense more on time. And Jimmy kept them on time at times. So it's just like a different level of it, like Jimmy's level of on time and then Purdy's level of on time. And when that offense was on time with Purdy, it was unlocked completely unlocked. Not this past year, they were injured, but the 2 years before that, with having that ability to throw on time and get the ball out, it changes everything for your offense. Like this, it's the Giants can be night and day with a quarterback who can process, anticipate. When you consider just how bad Locke, Jones, and DeVito processed and anticipated timing of a passing game.
Of course, man. Just think about it like in the most simplistic manner. Defensive backs are not going to be able to break on routes if the football is already coming out. And by the time that route is run, the football basically hits the wide receiver in the chest. Like it just completely removes that card from the defense that, oh, I see it's a slant now because homeboy already stemmed and went towards the middle of the field. So now I can break down on it. Oh, the football's out now. And now by the time the wide receiver meets the football, the safety is meeting the wide receiver.
Right.
And it's an incomplete pass or worse, an interception. So like that's the type of stuff we're talking about when Dan and I mentioned anticipatory passing. Timing is everything in football, and there's not a lot of it. So if you have a quarterback who can master timing, then that can unlock a level of your offense that, I mean, quite frankly, we have not seen since Eli Manning was here.
Yeah, exactly. And even when Eli was here, I think it's funny Eli goes over these 4 things that he looks for on tape, Nick, because I feel like a lot of the time Eli was going through his progressions and he was getting the ball out before the receiver gets out of his breaks, but like the receiver was just breaking in the wrong direction because they were running a system where like they needed to be on the same page, and you just see the ball come out early from Eli, and then it's like, how did he throw this interception? And now, fans who don't know better are like, this is the dumbest interception a quarterback could ever throw. And it's like, actually, I kind of like this interception when the ball's out before the receiver's out of the break. Receiver's just going to the wrong spot. Then when the quarterback's just staring, and then throws an interception or throws late and it gets tipped up and picked or jumped. Like, that's the better version of the interception. The ones that look stupid when it's probably a receiver running the wrong route.
And trust us, man. We remember Eli's time here in New York. Eli had a lot of dumb interceptions.
Yeah, dumb interceptions too. Yes, let me make that clear. He didn't see underneath overhang defenders a lot. Like he missed some guys.
He absolutely, but you're 100% right, man. With like Ruben Randall was like the wide receiver 1 for the New York Giants because Akeem Nicks was injured.
The one year they had all those injuries. I forgot, 2012, I mean, one of those years.
And Eli would just threw, I think, over 30 interceptions that one year.
Yeah.
Joined the 30 club. And it's just like, dude, he threw an interception on a go where the receiver ran a curl because he didn't read. Are we going to blame the receiver who doesn't know the playbook or Eli Manning for it?
Right.
And then Eli's the type of guy who's never going to throw his wide receivers under the bus. So he just like kind of like sits there with a dumb look on his face, maybe throws his hands up in the air and goes, oh, and then just trots off the field. Whereas like Tom Brady would get in that guy's ass,
Right.
Big difference.
Right. Good point. That's interesting too. Because then it get, without getting in that ass, it's like, well, I guess maybe it was the quarterback's fault. Here he is with this dumb look on his face again. So, he doesn't care about any of that stuff though. Point being though, like, I do think those are really important things that Eli brought up. And I think he's going to add something personally to their ability to evaluate the tape. And like you said, it's not going to be the be all end all for Joe Shane and Brian Dable as far as who they take quarterback. But if it helps even a little bit at all, I think it's worth it. And Eli Manning had some comments on Jaxson Dart, who obviously Eli Manning, Ole Miss, he's still connected to the program. And he's watched a lot of Jaxson Dart these last few years. And Jaxson Dart actually said that he's been close with the entire family. He speaks with Archie, according to Dart. He speaks with Eli. He said they text throughout the season every week, according to Dart. That's a lot. He said they've blessed them with experience. He's blessed them with experience. He thinks it's a huge asset to have this relationship with these people. And according to Dart, it would be a smooth transition to come to the Giants if the Giants were to draft him. Eli Manning, Nick, said this about Jaxson Dart. He said, I like Jaxson Dart. I've probably watched him more than anybody in this class just from watching Ole Miss. I've been around him, and he's a great kid. He's been in the same offense for 3 years, and he's been successful in it. I've seen him grow and progress, and he seems to be able to make all of the throws. That was Eli's little, elevator pitch on Jaxson Dart.
Hey, Jaxson Dart has a lot of things that Brian Dable's going to be looking for. But again, like, I want to reserve my judgment until I watch this. It seems like a lot of these guys do. Like, Brian Dable has made it known that he wants some mobility. And then you look at Shador. Shador doesn't have a ton of mobility. That's why I think like the Joe Burrow comp is like that could be like the ceiling of what we would say Shador Sanders. I feel a little uncomfortable.
I don't think it's fair to say he has a Joe Burrow ceiling.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I don't feel comfortable saying it because I have not watched that tape yet. But my point is somebody who can maneuver the pocket very well, is very clean in the pocket and can deliver accurate throws from the pocket and is not known for his mobility. My thing is Burrow might be more mobile than Shador based off of the Saturday film watching that I have under my belt. Is that
going to say based off the time when he ran for 60 yards and a touchdown against the Giants?
I think it was 47. I'm not sure. Something like that. Yeah. I was sitting there. You were there too. We were watching. And I remember watching the play and I was like, okay, man coverage, check, cool. And I saw the clear out from that side and I was like, all right, that edge, and I think it was Aziz, he better contain the B. He better contain the B. And I see him just fly around the tackle and I'm like,
I think he's going to house that, though. That's more breakaway speed than I expected.
I think Burrow is like a better athlete.
He's faster than people realize, yeah.
Yeah. But like I know Shador isn't really necessarily known that, whereas Jaxson Dart and Cam Ward and obviously Milroe, those guys well, Milroe is a phenomenal athlete and an offensive weapon if it didn't work out as a quarterback. And then the other two are good athletes and fun to watch from what I've seen so far.
Yeah, I was thinking, just something that popped in my head when you said that. I was thinking like, I made the case last year that whoever signs Daniel Jones this offseason to try to use him as like a Taysom Hill type, obviously not as explosive. No, I still believe this, like a more passing version of a Taysom Hill. You get more opportunities to pass, but you're still running. You're just not as explosive. You can catch sometimes. Jalen Milroe might be like that better version of Taysom Hill, like a whole new version of Taysom Hill to some good coordinator who brings him in and finds a way to get him, 10, 15 snaps a game.
Or he could work out a quarterback again. Dan and I have
could work out a quarterback.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he can't. Like, I don't think, I don't remember. I don't think, first of all, we didn't spend the time on it during that draft, but I don't remember watching too much Jalen Hurts, but I didn't have a huge opinion of him being a starting NFL quarterback like he is today in his second Super Bowl. So I think a lot of us would have looked at him and been like, can he ever keep an offense on time? Can he get the ball? There's other ways to win at quarterback, clearly.
Yeah, it was interesting. That draft was interesting because I loved Jalen Hurts at Alabama because of what happened to him and how humble he was when Tua came in and how he like talked with the media. And I'm like, dude, this is a 19-year-old kid who's showing like real leadership skills. And he earned my respect back then. And then he just like faded away from Alabama, wound up with Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma. And I remember watching that tape, not the all 22, but just watching Oklahoma's film. And I was like, yeah, he can rip it a little bit. He seems more polished now that he's with the Sooners. So maybe he'll be a thing. But the Giants were already out of the quarterback market. So I didn't do that deep dive into that quarterback class. Plus, I was a little bit depressed because Justin Herbert came out that year and I knew I like Justin Herbert a lot. And yeah, that's still something that's going to stick in the craw of Dan and I'm sure.
Yeah, that's a talented thrower who can get the ball out in time. I know he's been bad in the playoffs record wise, and then some picks that get tipped up and just like bad stuff happens to him. But we had that narrative for Matthew Stafford for 10 years before he won his Super Bowl.
Again, it's like just put on the tape type of thing. You watch him rip a football and you're just like, oh, okay, that's different than what I watch. Yeah.
Him especially because he works to the backside so often. When I did a 10-game evaluation of him on tape, I posted on Twitter that the way he works to the backside, and I think Jim Harbaugh talked about this. Talked about this. He has this thing where in his drop, he has like such good peripheral vision because he's so big and long. Harbaugh says he kind of like angles his drop this way, so his helmet's kind of like taking up most of the field, and he has an idea, despite angling toward whichever way it would be, side, he has an idea fully, just like peripherally, what's on the backside of every play. And you watch the tape, and he comes back to that backside a lot more than most quarterbacks. When I did an evaluation of him and Burrow through 11 games this year, and Burrow is one of the best processors in the NFL, Herbert worked to the backside more than Burrow did.
Yeah, Herbert's great with that. It's funny. I actually just watched the Week 18 game of Jimmy Garoppolo for a piece I did over at Big Blue 2. One of his, I think it was the first drive. Well, he had like a sick throw to open the game up the sideline. He had a couple. He actually looked like pretty solid. And obviously, I'm not advocating the Giants go out and get 33-year-old immobile Jimmy Garoppolo. But he found the backside dig on one that looked like, Matt Stafford out there. And it just goes to show you, man, sometimes you can just go to a stable situation with a coach who really knows how to get into your ear and teach you, and it can help revitalize you. But again, very small sample, very small sample size. I'm just saying that because we saw what happened with Baker Mayfield and Sean McVay, and Garoppolo looked at least competent after looking like crap with the Raiders in the previous year. A lot of that, though, too, was injury related, but I digress.
With Garoppolo?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've always been down on
No, I
Garoppolo.
know you're not a Garoppolo guy,
I
and
hate
I'm
Garoppolo.
not necessarily a Garoppolo
Yeah,
guy either. But it was a piece I had to do for free agents, for cheap free agents the
right.
Giants might consider. So I had to do an evaluation on him, and I went in thinking like, Jimmy Garoppolo, like Ed wants me to do an evaluation on Jimmy Garoppolo. Are you serious? And then I watched it, and I was like, I don't think he should be a New York Giant. The Giants aren't necessarily in that position, but it's actually better tape than I expected.
Yeah, and you probably find that something like Malik Willis goes to what you said before. Like, he was done. His career was over.
Yeah.
He was a total wasted pick, and now he looks pretty good with LaFleur over there every time he gets a chance to play. So it does matter. Obviously the situation is very important, but there's still always that ceiling on guys like Jimmy G or even Willis, like getting in. They'll have like a nice couple looks, but we're looking for something else at quarterback. We're looking for the long term. We don't need to worry about coaching and system and all this. Like, because if you're going for that perfect fit around the quarterback, it is so hard to do. You need to be like so good at your job at GM.
Since we're talking quarterbacks right now, let's go through those quarterbacks in the league. Who are those quarterbacks that we're referencing? Like the Pat Mahomes, the Josh Allen, the Joe Burrow, the Lamar Jackson, and
Jaden Daniels makes it for me.
Jaden Daniels
Only
makes it.
1 year. I don't care.
Does CJ make it? Like
I think it's proven that CJ doesn't make it clearly because we had this year of bad coordinator, bad line, right?
Yeah. I mean, I guess, but I still
But he's still young. Like I would still take him like easily.
Exactly. But my point is, Justin, if we didn't say him, my point is like there's not a ton of them. And then I don't even know what the cutoff is because I look at a guy like Baker Mayfield and I'm like, I really like Baker Mayfield. I can get around. I would support Baker Mayfield if he was my quarterback, but does he make that cutoff or is he in an echelon below that? Right. Because it's hard. Like, how do you stack these quarterback prospects? Because I think he could be a franchise guy, but we're still looking for something even more than just a quote unquote franchise guy. Correct.
We are because, and look, people can look
should we take baby steps here?
I don't want to take baby steps though, because the baby steps don't get you anywhere. They can get you to like a 10-year period of Kirk Cousins ball, which is not really what any fan wants. It'll be better. It won't be as embarrassing, but it's not going to take us to any championship wins. And it is a lot that we ask for, you and I. And it's not very realistic either, because like you just said, there's only a few guys who can get to that level. But the reality is, if you do any study of any 10-year period over the, once the game has changed and they change the rules to you can't play defense really, the only teams that have sustained success are the teams with these guys. So you have to try to get one. And that's just the reality. Like, there's no sustained success for these other teams. Like the Eagles are doing it right now, but then the Eagles had a year like last year, Nick, where they were terrible and everything fell off. And when the stuff starts to fall apart around the quarterback, like it was for the Eagles last year, they made the playoffs and got blown out by a mediocre Tampa team. When the stuff starts to fall out around the quarterback, like this year for 49ers, they don't even make the playoffs, Nick. So you can't really go off of that. But when the stuff breaks down around Patrick Mahomes and he has the worst possible scenario for his situation, he makes the Super Bowl, like the year they lost to Brady and the Bucs. He still makes the Super Bowl that year. And that's kind of the thing that you're going, like, things have broken down, bad teams around Josh Allen, injuries at time. He still makes the conference championship. So it's a lot to ask for, what we ask for, but it's all there really is to like to having the sustained success that you want as a franchise. When you try to build the perfect team around them, age, injuries, and variance from year to year can make it so you have bad years like the Eagles and 49ers have had in 2 of the last 3 years, despite no one realizing that half the reason they're always in it is because they don't have Allen, Mahomes, and Lamar in their conference.
Yeah, that's another thing. The AFC is another reason why I get so pissed about how mediocre, and that's being kind.
I know
the New York Giants are right now, because the Giants,
this is the window.
The NFC is wide open. But another reason why the NFC is wide open is because teams like the Giants can't get out of their own freaking way and they can't land a quarterback. It just seems like these AFC teams, and this is just by happenstance, they seem to be nailing their quarterback evaluations and then propping those quarterbacks up to actualize their talents. Whereas in the NFC, you got who now in the NFC where you're like a quarterback? Jaden, Jordan Love. And then you start talking about like Baker, right? Like who am I? Like Dak is getting older.
I guess.
But that's my Stafford getting older. Then you look at the AFC, it's just heavy hitter, dude. It's such a murderer's row to get through the playoffs. And you look at Joe Burrow and you look at Josh Allen and you say, dude, I feel bad for these guys because they got to go through Pat Mahomes, and not just Pat Mahomes, but Andy Reid, that offensive line, that defense that shuts down the run, Steve Spagnuolo. The Chiefs are a powerhouse. They are the Patriots of this generation. And it's so difficult for Josh Allen to get through them. And people are like, see, Josh can't win. It's like, it's not freaking Josh Allen's fault. It's not Lamar Jackson's fault. No, they have to go up against these freaking teams, bro. And the one time Joe Burrow actually
he gets through, he loses to the Rams. And that's devastating because when are the Bengals going to ever get back to that point?
True. Going through that conference, it's
murderer's row,
tough. But there is, like you said, the opportunity for Giants. But let's wrap up on the quarterbacks here. I'll say this, just a couple other notes that I've seen throughout the weeks. Like there was a video of Cam Ward and Shador Sanders training, and then they were with a Giants fan, and they asked the Giants fan, who would you rather take? Then I saw a video of Cam Ward just today discussing naming the Giants by saying like Joe, like he calls Joe Shane by the first name basis. And he's like, like, I'd love to be here. I'll work my ass off. I'll be in New Jersey.
Joe should come and get me. Something to that effect.
Yeah. And we've heard Sanders go even further when it comes to the Giants. There's all this talk from these two around the Giants getting them, despite having the 3rd overall pick. And I don't see them talking that much about the Browns and Titans, who are ahead of the Giants and both need quarterbacks and are both going to take one of them if they like them and they need a quarterback. So it's just interesting, I think, to have seen kind of this connection. It does feel like, despite how bad we've fallen as a franchise, Nick, these quarterbacks still want to come play here over the Browns and the Titans and organizations like that.
Bro, we're New York City.
Yeah.
We're New York City. Everyone wants to come and play for New York City over going to play for Cleveland. Let's be honest here.
True.
Or going to play for Tennessee. And I love Nashville, but we're New York City and the lights are bright and there's Malik Neighbors here. So you have somebody that you can rely on. You have a left tackle. You have some defensive pieces. They want to buy into this. And that's a good thing, right? Because who else would really want to buy into this right now with the Giants being as pathetic as they've been in recent memory? So I appreciate that. I wouldn't be shocked if one of those two end up being the New York Giants. Obviously, that's not breaking any fresh news or breaking news or anything like that. But Giants are sitting there right at 3. So all it takes is Cleveland being like, nah, we'll take Abdul Carter, or nah, we'll take Hunter, or Tennessee doing that same thing. I think Tennessee's more than likely going to go quarterback, but still a lot to play out. I wouldn't be shocked if either of those guys are Giants, though.
Yeah, it's better than us seeing they don't want to play for the Giants or they don't want to be here or anything like that. And I caught some flack, Nick, because I honestly believe the Giants are a better destination for a quarterback than a lot of other fans who are just very down on this team and just shot on this team think. Because I believe that a lot of why the Giants have been so unsuccessful these past 2 years, because the tape shows it, is the quarterback, is individually the quarterback. He can't process, and not Jones, just whoever's played quarterback besides Tyrod. They can't process, they can get the ball out on time, and everything is worse. But if you're a quarterback and you're not one of the people who have hurt this team in the last 2 years, move the ball, you get to inherit Malik Neighbors. That's very rare. Like the Titans do not have Malik Neighbors on their roster. Calvin Ridley is aging and never Malik Neighbors in the first place. The Browns do not have Malik Neighbors on their roster. So to me, that should provide a better spot for any of these college quarterbacks or free agent quarterbacks alone. Because if you're a quarterback and you're young in your career, what's the best thing you can do? Fire 15 targets a game to Malik Neighbors, right? Like that's a safety valve for you. That's somebody who's going to make you look a lot better than you actually are. And that was the case for Jones the first 4 or 5 games of the season. I know his overall stats didn't bear that out, Jones, but most of his production was just Malik Neighbors. So it actually did bear it out in the sense that, like, yes, if you get a quarterback who can actually work through the progressions and get the ball out on time, there'll be the production with Neighbors plus the other receivers who are open in that regard.
And I think the Giants will add another wide receiver to round out that room.
Probably, yeah. They're just very shallow at that position, though they are at most positions, I would say, at this point.
It just pisses me off so much, too, because we're about to do a cap episode that we'll be releasing more than likely after this, Dan and I. And I was just going through the cap, and I see like Jalen Hyatt's name. I'm like, oh, yeah, he's on the team. It's just like, yeah, we just traded up in the 3rd round to get this guy, and he can't even see the freaking football field. Doesn't even appear like the New York Giants want him out there. It's
hopefully that change. I mean, that could change fast, though, with Slayton being a free agent, but we'll see. It depends what they do. Like you said, they could add a piece at wide receiver at any given time. A big piece, a little bit. Like we don't know what they're going to do in that regard.
He was dejected at the end of the year.
He was very dejected, as he should be. He didn't play at all this year. Like I don't expect him to say anything else. Hinted at possible trade request, but we'll see what happens on that front. Anyway, thanks again for tuning into Big Blue Banter Podcast. Keep it locked and loaded. More content coming your way. Have a great rest of your weekend or week, and we'll talk to you soon.